Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 484. Oathsworn.
Welcome, citizens, to Meeple Nation. Grab your favorite beverage, pull up a chair, warm up those dice, and join us at the game table as we discuss board games and the board gaming world. Each week, the hosts of Meeple Nation share their love for board games and the amazing memories that come from playing games with some very outstanding people. Let us now join our hosts in their natural habitat, the game table.
We are the hosts of Meeple Nation. I'm Nathan Howard.
I'm Dave Holliday.
I'm Mogan Howard.
I'm Andy Holliday.
And I'm Douglas Stewart.
If you've been listening to the podcast for very long, you know that Meeple Nation is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com.
Tell us more.
And you also know that you should go to GameToppersLLC.com to check out all the goods that you can get there.
Welcome to Meeple Nation. We are your hosts. I am Andy Holliday.
I'm Douglas Stewart.
I'm Nathan Howard.
And I'm Dave Holliday.
We have a wonderful website that has been created just for our listeners, and we would love for you to visit our website, visit there, and check out all of our content. We have links to our episodes, all of our past episodes, and all of our future episodes will be found there. On top of that, we have blogs and photos of our gaming experiences. We also have bios of each of us and also of our bloggers. We also have a link to our Patreon page. If you love what we do, hopefully you love it as much as we enjoy creating this content. If you would like to help us improve your listening experience, jump on over to our Patreon page. We love our patrons. We very much appreciate all the support that we get and appreciate our future patrons as well. Finally, if you have any questions or any comments or want to share something with us, email us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We would absolutely love to hear from you. And you can also reach out to us on our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air.
Well, this week I am just brimming with excitement.
I felt it.
Because we are talking about one of my new favorite games, Oathsworn Into the Deepwood. And I'm so excited we get to talk about this. I'm excited we've been getting it to the table. I'm excited we've been making some progress on that campaign. We're not done with it, but we're making good headway. We're I think 7 or 8 missions in now of the 21 campaign arcs, so we're about a third of the way through. And just can't wait to talk about this game and share. If you can't tell, I really love this game. And
I'm not going to have a case of the gushings.
So I'm not going to have a whole lot of negative to say about this, but I am really excited to have the conversation.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about this game. I was not super excited to play it, but after I've played it, I very much enjoy this game. The stories are very well done. There's stuff that I love and hate about this game, and I'm looking forward to talking about those. I'm curious as to why you were not looking forward to playing it. I don't know. Sometimes we've talked about this a little bit in the past about running into the whole idea of campaign overload. And we would kind of run into the issue with we get a campaign game that we love and we'll start playing it. And then we get another campaign game that we love. I'm not going to mention Stars of Ikarios. I guess it's a little bit of frustration for our group is our love for campaign-driven games, our lack of ability to complete said campaign-driven games. So it's a love-hate relationship for sure, and I guess it's a love-hate commitment issue with us. But that was my reservation. That was why I was a little bit hesitant, because at the time I was still looking forward to finishing Gloomhaven, and now I've just given up hope for finishing Gloomhaven. I think that's a thing of the past.
I think this is a good starting point, actually. One of the things I think is great about Oathsworn is the length, right? 21, as far as the campaign goes, 21 chapters is a pretty decent length, right? It gives you some time to develop and everything, but it's not like, I'm not sure, does Gloomhaven have an end?
At this point, no. It seems like it's kind of endlessly replayable.
Yeah, and then with Gloomhaven 2.0 coming out, it's even got more life into it.
Right, and I love Gloomhaven, but with the problem that you're talking about, Oathsworn is a great one that we should be able to finish because there is an end in sight.
Yeah, no, 100%. Gloomhaven was a game that I played during the pandemic. We played it on Tabletop Simulator, and we got probably 50 to 60 games in, and then I just hit total burnout on it. And I still enjoy it. You know, we got it to the table a few times, and I enjoy that, but that is just too many. So I really agree, Dave. Like 21 missions, and they are kind of broken into halves, so you can kind of split them up. You can split a game session up if you just want to do the story half, and then come back to the battle half later. Good pacing. As far as that goes, you can kind of manage your time, how much time you want to dedicate to a play session when you actually sit down and play it that way. And so that's another way that it's kind of versatile in addition to being, I think, the appropriate length.
And I do like that it breaks up those chapters into from the story version to the combat, or the story side to the combat side. Gives you a nice break so that if you're looking for a shorter time frame, you can break those up. Don't think we ever should, because the story converts right into the combat phase, so they're very much related. So I like to play them back to back, but I do like that as an option.
I agree, and I think that the story, like you said, Nathan, it's well written, and I think it's written in a way that builds anxiety almost for the battle to come. It kind of gives you a level of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Anticipation, excitement.
Yes. Yeah, it gives you a level of anticipation of that battle, and then when it happens, my at least for me, my excitement level of how that battle plays out and what's going to happen, because my anticipation's up. That level of excitement is way higher than if we would have just jumped into a battle, because of the story and the background that's already been laid out prior to that battle occurring. I think it is really well done on how they did that. I think it helps that excitement level, and at least for me, I'm 100% vested in it and very interested in what's going on, and the story, not just during the story part of the game, but the story that's happening during the battle as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's actually a really great place to start if we want to kind of start breaking the game down just a little bit, because you do start with the story half and then you play the battle half. And the story for the game, I think, is phenomenal. The general setup is humanity, what's left of humanity, sort of exists in these last little like cities, these last bastions of civilization. And the Deepwood, full of monsters and horrors and unimaginable nightmares, is sort of creeping in, right? And it slowly decays and rots everything. It's humanity's struggle to fight back the Deepwood in this very kind of grimdark fantasy setting. And you play as a group of Oathsworn. You have taken an oath and are sworn to fight the evils that come out of the Deepwood and the monsters that exist there, and to defend humanity. The writing for this game is phenomenal. They hired some award-winning writers for it, and you can tell. You can immediately tell, as people who have played a lot of campaign games and are familiar with a lot of the story and writing and prose in typical board game books. This is a major step up from the typical fare of most games.
It's a meteor story too.
Yeah.
And by meteor, I mean it has more bulk to it, right? Not a meteor falling from the sky. And I think that's what I really like. I like about it, because you have games like Gloomhaven where it gives you a story and it gives you a little synopsis, little bullet points. You know, it's a small sampling of the story. Whereas I feel with the story that's in Oathsworn, it's a more deep, detailed. I become more invested in that overall story arc, as opposed to playing a couple of sessions of Gloomhaven where the story has kind of overlapped. And I refer back to Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, where that was a longer story arc that was all combined, I felt anyways, than kind of expanding onto those different branches in Gloomhaven, the original game. But Oathsworn, I really loved the story, and I loved you talk about the anxiety that's there. And I think it's like watching a suspenseful show. You know, it gets you involved, it gets you excited. That anticipation is there. You're lost off the wire road in the Deepwood and trying to find your way and trying to survive. And what are you going to come across, and how are you going to survive this battle? The story writing is exceptional in Oathsworn. And you can, like you said, you can clearly see the breadth of those writers as opposed to just kind of a sampling of a story.
Well, not only that, I think that they've done a great job at helping you feel like you're helping tell the story, because you're posed with, in pretty much every story mission, right? You can't do everything. You have to choose, and what you choose to do and what you choose not to do is going to have ramifications later on in the story. It's almost like you're co-telling that story with the writers, and the way they've implemented that is really well done. And it also builds that level of anxiety, right? Because, oh my goodness, we have to make this choice. What are we going to do, right? What are going to be the ramifications of us? Are we going to choose wrong? Is this going to hurt us in the long run by not going after this specific thing in the game? We're choosing this other path. I really like that aspect of it, where you're not doing everything in the game, and you're not meant to. You're meant to choose a specific path, have that be a unique experience because of the way we chose to have our characters choose the story. We're not just being told, oh, this is what happens, this is what you do. We get to make decisions.
Yeah.
And
there are decisions to be made.
And deal with the consequences, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that as far as the gameplay goes, like you're alluding to, is they did a really good job of integrating those. Basically, in the story mode, you set up a little map of the city, and it's got a bunch of different locations that are, they'll have the title of there's the banksmith, or the
Sure, the Broken Oak, right? The apothecary, the militia headquarters, all the different places in the city you can go visit.
Yeah, a lot of different places, and then there's numbers attached to each one just for kind of logistic purposes, and then you have to make those choices. Okay, we're going to go here to investigate such and such a thing. It's impactful. Like I said, I just think they did a great job of integrating the gameplay there into the story, and it is impactful. And you're also on a time crunch too, right? Like you can't take all the time in the world. Well, if you get things done quick enough, you're going to get extra rewards for it.
How did you guys feel about it felt almost like a treasure hunt, trying to go through the city and to find certain things a lot of times, not always, but some of those stories, it almost sends you on a treasure hunt. You're trying to find certain people, you're trying to find a certain thing or whatever, right? How did you guys feel about that more treasure hunt aspect of the game?
So I really like it, but you do have to pay attention to the writing as you go from place to place, because it will drop clues as to where you are supposed to go as you're moving around the city. You may not meet your objective at one location, but you'll hear people whispering about something. And if you're paying attention, it should lead you. You can kind of piece together the clues to get you where you need to go. And what I like about that is it makes the players feel clever. If you're not really paying attention and you're just kind of going through the motions, you're not going to do as well. You're still going to get to the battle, but you may be ambushed. You may not have as many tokens to spend, et cetera, et cetera. But if you can pull it off and do it in time, you're going to get extra rewards. You're going to have extra tokens, and you're going to feel clever. And I think that's the best part, is you're going to feel like you were able to noodle that out and sort of solve the puzzle.
And you have to be able to figure it out, right? Like, because like you said, it's not a give me. Right. It's you have to be paying attention, and it's not like it says, oh, you have to go to the banksmith for this. You might hear something and go, okay, I bet they're describing the banksmith.
Right.
And I like how you say in time, because you have a time limit.
Yeah.
That if you don't complete your search within X amount of turns, then something happens, the story arc changes, and the story evolves and gets pushed to the ultimate end anyway, and then you go into battle less prepared. I really enjoyed that too. So it's not just, we can just go explore everything. Play some of those games like Chronicles of Crime, where you can go and you can investigate everything, but it just eats at your time and gives you a air quotes lower score. But whereas in Oathsworn, if you squander your time, you go into battle disadvantaged, or you don't have everything you're looking for. And I love how the story in the app, that this has a very, very good app companion that goes with it.
The app is exceptional.
As you have those consequences, that changes the story. And it might not change the story now. It might not change the story in this story situation. It might happen 2 or 3 adventures further down where, hey, did you save this person, or did you allow this group of people to die? I love how those consequences aren't immediate, and it's okay, well, you did this, but you're going to do something later and you're going to do something later, make a couple more decisions. And then it's like, oh, hey, had you saved these people, the story would have been different.
Yeah, plus you're gaining like allies, right? And that may unlock additional options in the app, or once again, your decisions make a difference in what you're doing, whether it's speeding things up to get benefits or whether you're meeting new people and adding them to your collection of allies. One thing which is one of my favorite things about a lot of campaign games, not all campaign games have this, but I really like the fact that we have unique characters, similar to like a dungeon crawl, and dungeon crawls are my favorite type of campaign games. And it has kind of that feel to it. It's not a dungeon crawl, but it has a feel like a dungeon crawl a little bit. We each are playing our own unique characters. I'm playing the Warbear, which I have thoroughly enjoyed playing. We have unique abilities, and we get to level them up and gain new stuff and new cool things to do in combat. And as far as that goes, that's been a really exciting aspect for me, is to see my character develop over time as we level up, and I get to pick which abilities I want to put into my hand of cards, and trying to get some synergy between my abilities and my equipment and everything else during the battles themselves. That's probably my favorite aspect of it. Obviously, the battles are probably going to be my favorite aspect, most people's, I would imagine. But I've really enjoyed playing the Warbear and seeing that development and seeing her get better and the different amazing things she can do, because as we've leveled up, I'm just like, oh my gosh, she's like, this is such a cool combination. She does so much damage, or can take out a bunch of smaller enemies all at once, right? And it's been really fun. It's been really fun to see.
You just unlocked an ability where you can go over to a building or a tree and topple it onto a group of enemies.
Yeah.
You can use your bulk to push objects over onto them. And it's fantastic, right? Once that unlocks, you're like, okay, now how can I use this in battle?
Absolutely. And you do that, right? You're looking for any opportunity to use your cool abilities that you've just unlocked. So much fun. It is so much fun.
And not only can you change the cards that are in your hand, you can change your miniature.
That's true.
Which is a very nice touch, where you can, the head, the arms, even the torso is replaceable, that as you upgrade to specific armor or specific weapon, you can swap off your arms to have your miniature represent what you're currently wielding.
Yeah, they have a really cool armory system. So as you evolve your character, you can sort of match that mini to represent, what you're wielding and what you might look like.
Character development, if you want to call it that, like you're talking about, is one of my favorite things as well. A lot of people we play with, Richie as well, he loves that. We've looked at games in the past where it seems like we look at it and we go, God, it's just going to take so long. I'm not sure I'm going to like this, the way the character development goes. I feel like in this game, it's a slow development. It actually gives me hope for other games, because it doesn't feel as bad as you think it would, right? Like you're looking forward to those developments, but you're able to really enjoy where you're at, and you're not really missing out on it being as slow as it seems. And so it really gives me hope, actually, for some of the other games that we've played, where that's been kind of the fear, I guess, of some of the other games.
Yeah, and that's got to be such a balance issue, right? When you're developing a game. I mean, I go back to thinking of the video games we used to play when we were kids, and having to go out and just gain XP and just kill a bunch of things, and it's just boring. It's just a slugfest to gain XP so you can level up. And board games like that, where you don't ever see improvement, oh my gosh, it just takes forever. It almost becomes monotonous. Don't feel like they've done that in this. I feel like we've progressed quickly enough to enjoy seeing that development and enjoy seeing your character get better. It hasn't been too fast to where it's just like, okay, now we just destroy everything, and almost to where it's not even fun because we're so overpowered. I think they've done a really great job in balancing that.
I really want to talk about some of the things I love and I hate about this game. I really hate that at the end of every combat, I have to lose an item.
I agree.
But
I actually like that.
I really love that there's usually an upgraded option. Right? But sometimes when we get attached to a certain item or a certain skill that we're liking, that we like to use. And so that is one of those things that I'm like, oh, I really hate to have to lose something.
So just for clarity, what Nathan's talking about, at the end of every battle, they have a rule. It's kind of a system in place where, to represent the wear and tear of your gear and your items, you have to break something. So you go into battle with armor, weapons, and a gear item of your choice, but something has to break, something has to give, something got lost in the course of that battle. And I like that. Just from a thematic standpoint, I really enjoy that part. But I can see what you're saying. You do get attached. You get attached to some of the things you have and the play style that those weapons or gear cards allow you to play. And if you have to give those up and choose something else, sometimes that can feel like you're being forced to change. But I enjoy it.
Cinematically, it makes sense, right? I mean, you're in combat. You do have that wear and tear on your gear. But yeah, sometimes when that's forced on you, that's kind of a bummer.
I find myself planning ahead, like, okay, I don't want to take all my best stuff in because I don't want to lose any of it. So I'm going to take this one thing that's just a little bit worse. And that's what I'm breaking.
Yeah, I'm going to take something that I know I can break.
I've followed that same thought, but it has always kept me from, I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was a staff or something. I just kept keeping that in my bag, keeping it in my bag, keeping it. I'm like, I realized like three missions later, I'm like, man, I still haven't used that thing that I was really looking forward to using because I don't want it broken.
Yeah, but it is interesting because as we've played through the game, fun to see how many conversations we have when we go to gather that gear and you've got to go throw it into the backpack, right? We have a shared sort of stash, our shared backpack. And it does lead to those kind of conversations. It's like, well, what should we keep? Well, like this item seems really good, but if my bow breaks, I really need a backup bow in our stash. I need a backup blade. I need a backup piece of armor or shield or whatever. And so it does kind of force you to manage that inventory in a really interesting way. And I personally really like the decisions that the game forces you to make because of that.
Yeah, that's true. And you do have to plan ahead. I like the fact that, and like Nathan said, right, we're typically finding more stuff and we're finding things that are going to replace it. So you're not left without a weapon. You're not left without a good weapon, in fact, right? So,
but it's that fear I'm going to lose something.
Right. And you're absolutely right. Sometimes you go in with, you're like, man, I don't want to lose any of this stuff. I tried to plan, I'm planning on losing this armor, but then it worked so well and I really enjoyed the ability. Now I don't want to lose it, but I don't want to lose my weapon and I don't want to lose this other item that I have. And you're right, Doug. It definitely creates sometimes a decision that you don't want to make.
So again, it's one of those things that I both love and hate about the game.
Nathan, at the very beginning, you said that you weren't looking forward to playing this. I, however, was very much looking forward to playing this. Doug had set this up on his side table and had played through a little bit of it. I'm not sure if did you play through the whole thing? You did, right?
Not quite. I played about half.
Okay.
We haven't caught up to where I was.
But just the plastic alone, the miniatures in this game, I'm in 100%. Just with the components, the terrain. There's plastic terrain. I mean, it's full blown trees and cool stuff, right? You got houses,
walls, houses. Yep,
it is really cool. I can't wait for Autumn, your daughter Autumn, to have everything painted because it's going to even make it more epic on the board. And the table presence. The table presence is really great during the battles. It looks amazing. I can't believe how many heads were turned when we were at Icon. And we had this on the table and people would walk by and like, what in the world are they playing? That looks really cool.
That, and we were all leaning our heads way close like we were praying for over some sacrifice.
That's
all
true.
Trying to listen to the app.
Yeah, we had the app. I had it on my tablet and I had it up as high as it would go, but the noise made it so we were all leaning clear into the middle of the table to try to listen to it. But and I'm glad you brought that up because we should mention that the narration in that app, it's done by James Cosmo, and I'm not super familiar with him. A lot of people know him from Game of Thrones, which is not something I've seen or really know anything about. But I do know him from Braveheart, but he does a phenomenal job, and his voice and the way he reads the narration, I think, is absolutely perfect for this setting and kind of the grimdark fantasy vibe that this game gives off. A perfect pairing as far as that goes.
Yeah, it was just hard to listen to at Icon.
Yeah, it was.
It was just
we were all leaning over. Yep.
Yeah, which for some reason when we were all leaned over, that meant that someone needed to talk to us. It happened almost every time.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing?
What are you guys doing?
We're listening. Shut up and go away. The narration was phenomenal. Is phenomenal, and it is very much one of the shining parts of this game. And I think I love games that have the app narration and are able to use that inflection and the tone that they use to make it so much more enjoyable. We go back to Forgotten Waters. Forgotten Waters is some superb writing and very humorous, but comparing that to this is like comparing a comic book to a novel. I mean, it is both are enjoyable, but the way that this is done is phenomenal.
Yeah, it really is. Kind of moving from the narration, we've talked a lot about the story and how that works. You kind of go through all that, and I'll just make mention of one more thing. So the artwork on those maps is done by I'm going to butcher this name, but it's Francisca Berald, and she is an artist and cartographer who does work for a lot of D&D projects or products. Honestly, probably are familiar with some of her stuff if you've seen a lot of the D&D stuff. She also did the maps for Jaws of the Lion and for Frosthaven. So these are really high quality, detailed, incredibly fun to look at maps that you're kind of moving around on as you're exploring the story and doing all these things. Once the story kind of hits a pinnacle, you either go out into the Deepwood or something attacks or something happens and it leads you into a battle of some sort. And at that point, you set the map aside and you pull out the big battle board and you set it up according to the book. So you lay your terrain out and you decide where you want to put your minis. And then you throw these massive monsters out onto the board. And sometimes they're not as massive. Sometimes they're a single, one hex figure, but more times than not, they're just these big monstrous creatures that look so cool on the table. And then each one of those creatures comes with sort of a board that explains how it works and what things will trigger when it does certain things. And they each come with a deck of cards. And I really love the AI system in this. I actually think that the AI system in Oathsworn is simpler than games like Gloomhaven. It probably has a lot to do with the fact that in something like Gloomhaven, you're controlling a lot of different stuff. And in Oathsworn, you're typically only controlling, 1, 2, or maybe 3 characters, up to maybe 5. But you have a lower number of miniatures on the board that you're trying to manage and take care of. But that AI system, the way that the board is laid out and the way you just flip those cards and do what's on them and execute that. So each Oathsworn has a certain amount of animus that they can spend to execute their abilities. And once all that animus is spent, then the monster gets to act. And more times than not, as you flip those cards and see what the monster is going to do, or sometimes they play face up. Some are face up front, some are face down. So sometimes you can see what they're going to do and sometimes not. But more times than not, that's when the pain begins, because they do lay some hurt on the group big time. And as you do damage to them, they react. So their life is represented by dice on a board. And as you whittle those dice down and take them down to 0, they do not like it when you break parts of their body. And as soon as you do that, they get a big reaction attack that sort of interrupts play. They get to do a bunch of stuff. And so all of this kind of combines in, I think, a really slick and fun battle system that forces the players to make interesting decisions and forces them to decide how hard they want to hit the enemy and when, and what position on the map do we all want to be in? Because if this thing reacts to us hitting it hard, who's going to take the brunt of that attack?
And also where, right?
Yeah.
Because you can target different parts of the creature's body.
Right.
And that's, again, impactful.
Yeah.
Not only that, it's like you said, that when you get hit, typically you're getting hit hard. And as you break more and more dice, the attacks get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
And at that point, when you're getting to the more difficult cards, right? You break certain dice, right? You're going to get to you discard some of the lighter attacks and you start using the more dangerous abilities of that particular monster. You're already feeling the hurt from the battle. Your characters are, the more powerful attacks start coming out. You really have to start thinking about who do you want to break that die, because that person's probably going to be the person getting attacked. And maybe you have one of the characters that's really been hit hard multiple times. Yeah, they may have the perfect attack to maybe break another die, but are we ready for that character to be knocked out? Because that may actually happen.
So many times at the table, you are asking whether you should and not whether you could.
Absolutely.
And this is one of those things, again, that I love and hate about this game is that, I mean, you can work on the monster, whittle down multiple parts of the body so that they're all down to a lower number. And then somebody does like an area effect, which is going to affect multiple parts of the body. If you do that and you break more than one die, that monster gets to stop, interrupt, and react. And then the second time, they get to stop, interrupt, and react. And if you did 3, again, you get to stop, interrupt, and...
Yeah, if you break 3 dice, they get 3 big reactions.
Which I think, that for me, that doesn't make any sense to me. I guess probably my one drawback that I don't like about the game. I'm going to choose not to do what I feel is a more devastating attack because I'm going to be in a position where I can't withstand that rebuttal coming back at me.
Yeah, you can't tank all of that reaction damage.
Right.
Yeah.
On the other side, I do really enjoy the combat where you have your weapons and you have set dice, so I can use red, yellow, or black dice. And then at that point, I can add any number of dice that I want. I could roll 20 dice if I want. It would be really dumb to do that, but I could because I really like how that combat works out where you can pick up as many dice as you want and you can roll them. However, if you roll
two blanks,
if you roll 2 blanks on those dice, then that's a complete miss. There's a risk. And I love that on all of the challenges, all of the tests that there is. I mean, you can roll as many dice as you want, but if you roll 2 blanks, doesn't matter if you had 16 successes. If you had 16 successes, if you had 2 blanks, that's a miss. And so I like that, but again, going back to the boss, I hate that I have to restrain my attack because I'm upset or I'm nervous that I'm not going to be able to take the retaliation.
For those people that have suffered the wrath of the D6, they have cards.
Yes.
You can flip instead of having to roll D6s.
So you can take the wrath in a different form.
Sometimes it's worked out better for me in many times that I've decided to use the cards instead of dice because
It's a psychological thing.
No, it's not. It's a real thing.
So it actually is statistically a more balanced experience. Because it is a deck of cards and it represents 3 dice, the statistics that you would find on 3 dice, and then those cards get shuffled. And what it allows you to do is see what results have come out because you don't have to reshuffle the deck until it runs out. Actually using the cards does give you a little bit more of a tight experience. It allows you to potentially do more damage and actually see and manipulate your attacks in such a way that you can maximize what you're doing. It also offers a little bit more of a tight experience for the monster because that luck can swing for or against them as well when they're resolving their attacks. So that's a decision players have to make. But I love that they have both the dice and the cards in the game.
I think it's a good option for those who think D6 hate them.
That's because they do.
In your case, they do.
D6 hate me.
And Doug's.
Not as much, but yeah.
The evidence is mounting at an alarming rate, Nathan. They really do hate me. It's not as fun to bring up anymore because where it used to be funny, now it's just
pain.
Now I just get these looks like, oh, shut up. Like, quit complaining about it. So are there any other sort of things that you loved or really didn't like about this game that you want to talk about?
I'm always excited about new mechanics. And this has a new mechanic in how and when you can play your cards. So your abilities are represented by cards. Your attacks quite often come from cards. I'm playing the witch in our game, right? So most of my attacks are spells. And the battle flow system in this is a really cool new mechanic that I got really excited about. But you're going to have to explain it.
Yeah, no, I do love the battle flow. It's really cool. So you have sort of a 0, 1, 2, and 3 slot around your board, and playing certain abilities will put them in different slots, and then they have to cool down essentially. But they don't just automatically rotate. You have to play abilities or use things on other cards, spend animus, etc., to actually rotate those cards around. So if they're in the 3, they've got to rotate to the 2 and the 1 and then back to the 0 before they can come back into your hand. If they get played into the 1, they've just got to go back to the 0. So different cards are harder to cycle through. It sort of puts a cooldown and a timer on how often you can sort of spend your really big attacks and do your best stuff, so to speak.
Yeah, and that can really end up hurting you if you don't plan accordingly.
Yeah.
And, Nathan's mentioned a few things he loves and hates about the game. And I guess maybe that's one thing I wish that I almost wish that it would just, at the end of the round, after everything's done, before we cycle to a new round, that everything would just cycle along your battle flow. And that way you're guaranteed, well, maybe not guaranteed, but most likely going to get fresh cards into your hand. Because once they get to that 0 slot at the end of the round or at the beginning of the round, you get to pick those up and they go back into your hand. That being said, I would like that, but I have actually enjoyed kind of the planning aspect of, okay, I need to play this. I really want to play this ability because it would be perfect for this scenario, but I have to play this card to get my cards battle flowed. Otherwise, I'm going to be completely hosed for the next several rounds when I can't do anything because everything's stuck.
I kind of agree, but also not at the same time, only because what they did really well with those cards is made characters feel powerful. They gave you abilities. You are not weak. You are going in as an Oathsworn. You are a powerful character. You are a force to be reckoned with. And you have these very powerful abilities. But you can't just spam them. You can't just go over and over and over with really powerful stuff. You have to think about the timing, and then you have to think about how you're going to get that back into your hand. And so what I think it does is it lets your character be super, super powerful while also putting enough restraint on those abilities to make the game a challenge.
Right. And this, I guess, kind of goes back to my love of strategy and trying to figure out the puzzle, right? And it is with how to get the most out of your abilities is a puzzle. And that's one of the things that I love about it is that challenge. The downside to it, though, and I can totally see where you're coming from with that, Andy. In order to, when you're going to take a big hit, you have to try and defend. Quite often, that means, I have to discard one of these cards in order to have a better defense so that I don't die. And that can totally ruin all of your plans as far as how you were going to get cards back into your hand.
Yeah, especially because that doesn't cause anything to battle flow. It just adds to the stack.
Right. And so that I could totally see that, especially if you're getting attacked a bunch, that can absolutely make life very, very difficult.
It's another one of those things that I love and hate. I think it's a great mechanic, the whole battle flow and trying to manage that. It's difficult. And it's like you mentioned, Doug, and if you're not planning for it, it can bite you in the end.
Yeah. And sometimes you'll spend a big ability because those cards also are your defense boosts when it comes to taking attacks. And so sometimes you'll expend these big attacks and then the monster is going to go to attack you and you're looking through the cards in your hand going, wait a minute, where's my big defense card? And it's like, oh, it's out in battle flow. Yeah. I don't have it. And this is going to hurt a lot. So, but I like that. I like the challenge and I like that the game is difficult. I like that it poses a challenge. I don't want to just waltz through a battle. I want it to hurt. I want it to really pose a legitimate threat.
With Andy, like what you were saying, sometimes you feel like, gosh, if it would just battle flow one at the end of a round, I could totally see that for sure. And it would totally help.
Tiddly?
Wow. Tiddly, dude.
But then when I look back at our plays, we haven't ever lost. We've often been on the verge, right? We've often been like, oh crap, Andy only has one life left. So does Nathan. There are tanks.
We've had people fall.
Yeah, we've had people get knocked out.
Right. So far, it's at a good place, right? It's in a good balance.
Yeah, I agree. Any other pluses, minuses, pros, cons, things you liked, things you didn't, you want to talk about?
No, I think we've hit everything that I had highlighted that stuck out to me.
I'll make mention of just one thing. This is something that makes me kind of sad, and that is just that this game does come with a standee version, which I think that's a shame. And I get it. I get why you'd need to have that from a production standpoint, from a cost perspective, from shelf on the space. Wow. From space on the shelf perspective, I get all of that. but the plastic in this game is just so incredibly awesome. And the idea of playing those battles out with just standees, it kind of hurts my heart a little bit, I have to admit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, when we did go to Icon, because we were traveling, we did play with some of the standee stuff or some of the cardboard.
For the terrain.
It's kind of funny. I actually had a conversation with our friend Brian about plastic versus standee just today as I was picking up some games from him. Some games like Gloomhaven has those miniatures expansions that are coming out, and they're going to be in waves because there's going to be a ton of miniatures involved with, or not necessarily waves, but in sets. A game still can be played with the standees and with cardboard. Not going to turn heads. It's not going to be the table presence that the miniatures provide. And it does enhance, but I don't necessarily think it's required, but it's a good enhancement.
I think I'm kind of with Doug. I don't know, like when we fought the worm, like if that had been cardboard.
Yeah, it would have been so disappointing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been really hard. I actually agree. There are a lot of games where standees will work just fine because of the scope of this game, the size of the monsters, the sort of scale of everything on that battle map, with the terrain, with the players, with the monsters. You need those full minis to, I think, really get the full effect and sort of cinematically and thematically enjoy the game.
I agree. It very much enhances the game.
I agree too.
Thanks,
Go,
Andy. All right. Well, that is Oathsworn. Do we want to do final thoughts? Final thoughts on Oathsworn, Nathan?
It's a game that's well worth your time. I look forward to completing this campaign. I like that it has the smaller number of scenarios so that it does feel like a game that we will complete. It doesn't have that ominous feeling of Gloomhaven, Frosthaven. It's more palatable, like Jaws of the Lion. I enjoy that. And so I think for that alone, it becomes a higher recommendation to me for a campaign-driven game. I'd put it next to my favorite, Star Wars Imperial Assault, for that reason alone.
That's awesome. And that's high praise.
This is a game that exceeded expectations for me. The first time we played it, the story mode, I was, I don't know, it seemed almost a waste of time. But then as we did it more and more, I was like, okay, no, I see the value. I see and I started to enjoy it a lot more. So our first play, I was like, it was fun. I don't know where to place it. After playing it multiple times, love it.
I understand. I'm kind of with you on that at first, Dave, with the story part of it. But I found myself, especially with that second play, enjoying the battle substantially more than I think I would have had that story not been there. Every time we've played since, I've felt that way. And I find myself really invested in what's going on, which in a lot of campaign games, there's not a lot of, from mission to mission, there doesn't seem to be a lot of continuity. Whereas this is a continuing story that is being told, and there's complete continuity in what's going on. And as far as a campaign game goes, that is something I really appreciated, that it's not just, okay, we finished this one, now we're going to do another mission that's not really related at all. I think of Gloomhaven, Shadows of Brimstone, a lot of those that are basically like that, right? It's like a standalone mission. This is not like that. It makes the story deep and, like you said, Nathan, very meaty. There's a lot of meat to the story. It makes me feel very invested in what's going on and makes me want to pay attention to that narration in the app instead of just zoning out, because I'm excited to know what happens next. And I think that for me, that's just the cool battles and that connection, the story and the continuing story was probably the strongest part for me and what I've enjoyed the most out of it.
Yeah, I love that. There's no side quests. You don't go get lost in the woods somewhere. You are progressing through that story. Like we said, there's 21 missions, and they are all combined.
In the Deepwood.
Yeah. But those 21 missions are all going to tell a cohesive story from 1 to 21. And I really love that too. I'm heavily invested in this game. I love Oathsworn. I've talked about it previously on the podcast, and it's no surprise to anyone. This is already on my top 5 games of all time. I love it. The app is fantastic. Narration, writing, wonderful. The way the maps get laid out, all the plastic, the mechanisms of the story, the amount of time that it takes, the pacing, the battles, the AI, the battle flow system. all of it. I really love the progression, the fact that your characters feel powerful, all things that I absolutely love. And I just think that this is a game that's firing on all cylinders. They did a wonderful job. I think it's a brilliant design backed by some incredible talent in the voice acting and art departments. And it really shines for me as a standout game in the hobby. And that is Oathsworn, Into the Deepwood.
Until next time.
We'll see you staying on the wire road, deep in that deep wood. I guess you can't say deep twice. Deep.
You can.
You can. You did.
Yeah.
In the depths of the deep wood.
In the depths at the game table.
Thank you for listening and being a part of Meeple Nation. If you would be so kind as to follow, subscribe, share, and rate or review this podcast, it really helps to spread the fun. You can be more involved in supporting the podcast by joining the nation at patreon.com/Meeple Nation, or you can find a link at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. And while you're there, look at all our extra content. There are links to all our past episodes, a wide variety of blogs, pictures from our Instagram feed, and bios for all the hosts and our awesome bloggers. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all under Meeple Nation. If you would like to chat with the hosts or other members of the nation, you can join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. We hope to see you again at a game night, a con, or maybe a suspense-driven evening of Werewolf. Thank you for listening and supporting Meeple Nation, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We very much want to thank our patrons who help keep the podcast running. I personally want to thank my co-hosts for all the help they provide with both content here on the podcast, in addition to what we have available on our website. Without them, the podcast would not happen. If you too would like to support the podcast, you can join the nation at patreon.com/Meeple_Nation, or you can find a link to Patreon at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. If you have any questions, comments, or games you feel should be on our radar, you can always reach us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you. I am grateful to Doug and Andy who helped me edit episodes, and I want to thank James and Kim Clark who do the editing on our blogs and on our webpage, which can be found at meeplenation.com. We want to thank Brain Detergent for our music. If you want to find more from him, you can follow his links that can be found on our webpage, or simply search for Brain Detergent on YouTube to find more of his tracks. Thank you again for listening and being part of the Meeple Nation community.